Coming up today on the Locked On Hornets podcast, we talk about the passing of giant legend Big Pat Dowy passing away, and we talk about the impact on the live game day experience that you had when you bought a ticket to go watch the Hornets at the Spectrum Center. David and Walker join me to share their thoughts, and plus we'll give out some off-season grades. That's all today on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your pods, and that includes YouTube. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time? Game Time means you can download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase, and terms apply. Welcome in the band. Yes, we called everybody for this episode. There's David Walker. You can find him on Twitter at David B. Walker. Nata the Scribe is here on Twitter. Nata Edwards in real life. There he is in your frame as well if you're watching us on YouTube. No, we do not have the graphics up or the nameplates for either of them because we're taking baby steps, man. Like when the producer is out, I'm just glad I got to put emojis in the bullet points this time. I had fun with it. I decided every bullet point needed an emoji because I just could. So I decided to put it in there. So that's exactly what I decided to do. We got the band together because an unfortunate passing happened yesterday with the loss of PA announcer. And I'm not sure you could do the job any better than what Big Pat did for nearly 20 years with the Charlotte Bobcats and the Charlotte Hornets. And we got to see a couple of reports yesterday. We weren't exactly sure if it was true. And then the Hornets did confirm that PA announcer Big Pat passed away at the age of 55, and he had been with the team again for nearly 20 years. He was a part of the game day experience, and I tweeted this out. He was about as vital a part of that live experience if you bought a ticket as anything else. If you start to think about it, you wanted to win, you wanted to see all of your favorite players, but any moment that took place in the Spectrum Center was absolutely bigger because when you remember those moments, you hear the echoes of Big Pat's voice in the background. And that's what made everything goosebumpy whenever there was an awesome moment that you remember because you love the game so much. Now, I know this one hits you hard too. I believe you actually knew Big Pat pretty well after going to the games a couple of times. And I don't know if Big Pat ever met a stranger, to be honest.
No, he did not.
There were so many people that shared their selfies with him yesterday in honoring what Big Pat stood for with the Hornets community and the Charlotte community. So, Nat, I'll just get your thoughts on the impact that he had on the Hornets organization and the Hornets fan base.
It's funny you mentioned that, like, he never met a stranger. And that's very, like, that is so accurate. That man befriended everyone. He was one of the most vital connection hubs that you could have in that building because if you knew him, you were family. And if you were family, if there was someone that he knew, that's someone that eventually you would know. That man was incredibly charitable. He is one of the OG, I believe in Nata Edwards. He came in on the ground floor. Like that's what he was. He was so vital to me in my career. He was one of those people that you always that man could have been arrogant. That man could have been a lot of things. He wasn't. He was one of those people that took time to check in, see how you were doing, to make sure that, hey, do you know this person? If you're trying to do something else. And the amount of charity, the amount of stories that we're going to get over the next, I would say 48 hours are going to be some of the stuff of legends. And that I haven't even talked about what he did for the game time experience. And I would make the case that outside of maybe the Kobe stuff and maybe the Kemba stuff, a lot of his best work was done as the Bobcats PA announcer, because for a lot of nights, he was the sole reason to be there.
It really was true. Yeah. David, you go to a ton of games, and for me, the last couple of years, for those that don't know, Big Pat had been dealing with a condition called neuropathy. It affects your motor skills. He was in a wheelchair after a while. And there were some times during the last couple of years that he would not be on the mic. And it wasn't because whoever stepped in his place wasn't good. They just weren't Big Pat. And you either went to a Big Pat game or you didn't. And there was the experience felt when Big Pat was on the mic, and there was a different one entirely that didn't quite get to what you wanted when you went to the Spectrum Center if he wasn't on the mic. But when he was, you felt it. And I'm telling you right now, I sit next to Willie P at WFNZ. WCNC folks are around me. Doesn't matter who is around me when I go and attend via media pass or whatever. People are talking, oh man, we don't get Big Pat on the mic. That's what it was. Like, that was one of the few first things that you talked about every time the ball was in the air, and you could hear him with the introductions. Oh man, no Big Pat. David, I know you went to a couple of those games. I don't know if you caught any games without him on the mic doing the PA thing, but clearly such a big part of the experience when you would go.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was going to say, you guys probably had a little more of a personal interactions and relationship with him. But the thing of it was, man, if you went to a game, then you had a connection with him, and he had a connection with the crowd. I was just watching, someone had tweeted out a profile that WBT did on him a few years ago, I guess, when he was kind of coming back and forth and battling some of his health stuff. And he said, the crowd gives him energy, right? And then he was so famous for giving the crowd a lot of energy. To Nada's point, like, when there wasn't a lot of energy to be had in the building, right? I mean, his booming voice was the constant. And it's just, he was a fixture, fixture in that building, a fixture for that team, for this franchise, and goes back to the Bobcats and all the way up to the Hornets now. And you just think about all those little things he did. My favorite was, when the opposing player was at the free throw line, how he would pronounce the name real slow and just stuff like that. Yeah. So, he was like the ultimate Hornets professional and cheerleader and fan and supporter. And then, that doesn't hit on any of the stuff that Nata said on a personal basis, but like, just a huge loss for the team and the game day experience, man. And I know they'll do something for him once the season starts. But it's just, it stinks for a lot of people because Nata, you said it, man, like, people are blasting out pictures and stories and all types of stuff, man. And he would take pictures with people before and after games and the ushers. And so, I mean, just, it's really special to have someone in the building like that, that's forward facing, but that is also, in touch with everybody in there that's working, that's not in front of the camera or the microphone, right? So just a special guy.
Like, that dude, yeah.
Yeah, well, and so you're bringing up like the fan relationship. Yeah, it's not like I knew him as well as Nata did, but so basically, even if I was covering the games, basically my relationship with Big Pat was what I heard over the speakers. It wasn't necessarily my day-to-day interaction, but that's what most of the people listening will have, just because of so many people having walked into the Spectrum Center and listened to him. But you're right, David. Like, the thing about Big Pat too, if you look at some of the write-ups about him, I think Rod Boone had one when he was still at the Athletic a couple of years ago, if I'm not mistaken, and then of course took over at the Charlotte Observer. There was a little tiny YouTube clip when Big Pat was announced hello, the voice of the introductions on 2K. When we're talking about this guy, I know we can localize what legends are to us within the community. And then what we can do is maybe we can exaggerate their feeling because exaggerate their impact because of what it meant to us. And maybe that's not true nationally. And that's still true here, right? A Houston Rockets fan isn't going to have the same experience with Big Pat as what we are as Hornets fans. I will say the fact that he was the guy that was doing the introductions for 2K, the fact that NBA players got to see what he was about when they would visit Charlotte. And one of the more memorable Kobe farewell tour introductions was the dude that was in Charlotte. That's how you get the main job on the NBA video game. So it's not any exaggerating of the type of skill that he had or just how damn good he was. Man, I'm telling you this, before I knew who Big Pat was, before I knew the legend, right? I went to a Bobcats game. It would have been like 2009. I was in high school, and I remember going, it was actually one of the more underrated fun games in Bobcats history. Gerald Wallace had a game-winning tip-in to beat the Grizzlies, and at the buzzer, bang. So we had to go to review, trying to figure out if it got off Gerald Wallace's fingertips in time. It did. Crowd goes nuts. But I walked away from that. I'm not kidding, man. I walked away from that game thinking, that PA announcer is dope as hell. I love the way I'll always have in my head, anytime I hear Rudy Gay or OJ Mayo, I hear Rudy Gay, OJ Mayo.
Yeah.
He was so perfect the way that he towed the line for homerism and professionalism. Like when he pronounced whatever the opponent's name was, it wasn't in distaste, but he's not really interested in giving you no love.
Yeah.
When it's Kimba, hell yeah, baby. Like, we're about to party. And so I walked away thinking it was the greatest. Everybody had no, traveling's the call.
Yeah.
Everybody's favorite there. And Nata, just one more point from you before we go to break. You're so right in pointing out the Bobcats days, because on the FanDuel text line, the famous FanDuel text line at WFNZ, the number one call that people remember from him is about Gerald Wallace. Gerald Wallace. Like, that was the thing people kept texting in. They kept typing the G, Gerald Wallace. And that was a Bobcat, which so many people try to scrub from the basketball history here in Charlotte. And we think of Big Pat when we think about the only endearing thing about that franchise, along with its only all-star in that franchise's history.
Along with Gerald Wallace, Big Pat helped keep the Bobcats lights on. Like, let's just call it what it is. And as I tweeted out yesterday, you cannot tell the story of the NBA in Charlotte without at least a paragraph on Big Pat. I don't know how this franchise is going to choose to commemorate Big Pat. I wouldn't want to be them to figure out what it is, because it is so difficult. Because I would argue that he should have something in the cafeteria, because a lot of what he did, a lot of the special stuff that he did, was the connections that he made in that cafeteria. If you showed up for the media meal, which often wasn't very good until recently, and Walker knows exactly what I'm talking about on this.
Yeah.
So, like,
I hear you.
They tried.
I ate it though. It was free. I kept eating it.
Exactly. It was free, so that's the only thing. But for a lot of the like connections that he made, I would argue that the cafeteria needs to be like the place that they commemorate him at. The problem is, and Walker knows what I'm gonna say, it's already commemorated to Steve Martin.
Yeah. Look, there could be room for both. I don't, right? And I'm not sure how they're gonna do it. One thing I do know though is, like, the Hornets get this stuff right. I mean, they've often, with Rick Bonnell, you get to see him and his clippings every single time you walk into the media entrance. It's right there.
The media scholarship they do is awesome too.
The scholarship is so good because it's what Rick stood for, right? Because he cared about helping young people. Steve Martin, they have a whole wall dedicated to how many games he's traveled to. Like, they did a really cool, detailed, almost mural of what Steve Martin, his travel days and some of the calls and the moments and the dates of some of the big calls. I think this is something that you can trust the Hornets to do right in honoring Big Pat, and Big Pat will have earned every single honor that he gets, that the Hornets are sure to give him. Like, that's just how it is. And so anyways, we can give some finishing thoughts maybe on the other side. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast, going to talk a little bit more maybe about Big Pat, as well as get David and Nata's Summer League thoughts. It's been a little bit since we've talked to them, so we'll get their Summer League thoughts as well. That'll be coming up here in the second segment on Locked On Hornets. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time? Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Plus, there's so many deals. I've talked about it a million times. Last-minute deals, flash deals, zone deals, all-in pricing too, which I like because you can toggle that feature and it shows the total up front, which means no surprise fees at the checkout. I don't like surprising money checkout stuff. I hate it all. Seat Views, also the lowest price guarantee, game time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. Locked On NBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. More Locked On Hornets ahead.
And now, City, get on your feet and greet your Charlotte Hornets.
Here's Big Pat on the call. Something everybody has heard quite a bit. I wanted to play something, just something for the people here from Big Pat with whatever your favorite call is, but it's going to be tough to not hear that anymore. I wonder if, I think they've done this before where you just have the recording of Big Pat. I don't know if you do that for like the first game and then you move on to somebody else, like just trying to think of different ways to honor him, but it's going to be hard. It's such a big task to get it right. Even if we trust the Hornets, it's still going to be such a big task to do. And I'm hoping that they're able to deliver on some of it. What were your favorite calls? Did you have any guy real quick, David? Did you have anything? Was it the traveling or was it the Gerald Wallace? Anything else that comes to mind?
I mean, the no is classic, but I think the thing that you pointed out, the way he straddled the line so well between obviously being calling the game for the home team and having a little fun with the opposing team, like all that stuff he did, slowing the names down, like taking all the exaggeration and excitement out of his voice when he was announcing opposing team's player. Like it was done in not a spiteful way, right? Not a mean way, but kind of a fun way. And like that's part of the NBA. You turn on TV, you know what team's announcers you're listening to. Obviously, you're in the building of the Hornets. Like that's kind of built into the DNA of the NBA game production. And for him to with such class, straddle that line and to where I'm sure some of the opposing players found it funny. It's a funny thing he did. And that was the biggest thing for me because you could always tell. You always knew it was coming too, right? Like when somebody stepped to the free throw line from the opposing team, you knew it was coming, and I look forward to that. And you're so right. Like I was just thinking while you were talking, if you went to a game, and maybe it would be a second, but if we went to a game and he wasn't there, you'd be like, oh man, no Big Pat, And like for the announcer, no one that just doesn't happen. I don't think so. Yeah, that was the biggest thing for me, how he would just treat all the players and the opposing team and stuff like that. It was cool.
All right, so I'm going to tell a story. It's the first night of the Hornets coming back.
Oh, yeah. That's a great one.
Yes. So, and mind you, it's the first night. Hornets name's coming back. Lance Stevenson is the building. For those that want to remember, or if I've given you a traumatic memory, I apologize. Lance is back. And you always know Big Pat's going to do something to get you hyped up for the fourth quarter. And for the longest time, it was let's go Bobcats. So the first night, mind you, Hornets name. He's trying to get everybody hyped for the Hornets and everything else like that. And he goes, let's go Bobcats. No one catch it except myself and Colin Hoggard. And of course, we had a show to do the next day. So what did we do? Of course, we mentioned it. And of course, who calls in? Of course, it's Big Pat talking about it. Of course, the only two guys that would ever catch this would be Colin Hoggard and not Edwards.
So he called in. What did he say when he called in?
Oh, he's like, yeah, he's like, I did it. Yeah, I messed up. And I would have gotten it away with it.
If it weren't for you kids.
Exactly. weren't for you kids.
Yeah, he was great.
You know what, though? People still do that today. People do that in print.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I
People do
know.
that.
Oh, yeah. We still have
Shout
the
out the
Bobcats
Bleacher Report.
graphics and stuff that shows up too. Yeah, the fact that he did it on the first night of the Hornets name change, I think we can forgive him, and we can forgive him for a lot of the other things, considering all the happiness that he brought to the table. So let's move on. Let's go to some summer league thoughts here. David, we'll start with you. Man, 7-1. It matters. We got the California Classic title. I'm taking that trophy away from Golden State. It's not theirs anymore, and we're putting it in the trophy case for sure. They go with one loss in Vegas, and the one loss that they had was a tight one against the Boston Celtics. What are your summer league thoughts, and any players in particular stand out to you?
I thought Brandon Miller was awesome.
He was very good.
No, I think my big takeaway, honestly, was like whenever you turned on this summer league game, it looked like a completely different approach and a completely different organized team. Like, it's easy to say that and paint it with a broad brush, but like I think it's absolutely true, because you saw an energy not only on defense but like on the bench. Players were locked in so much more organized and of the moment, and trying their damnedest to win these games and to play hard. And like, summer league is summer league, right? Like, these guys are good, looking for contracts, looking to get good stuff on tape. But like, if that's the first step of this team, if that's the first showing for the new style Charlotte Hornets, I thought it was a home run. Yes, the wins were awesome, and it's annoying that Miami won the summer league because heat culture. But the Hornets, I think, impressed me big time, and from the coaching staff down, right? Not to mention, hey, most of the team, the actual team, was in there watching. They were out there, they were doing stuff. So like, that's awesome. But just the play on the court was good to see, because there have been some uninspiring summer league games in the past. I don't know if you guys remember. So it was a breath of fresh air for me to see that new style Charlotte Hornets out there, and hopefully they can just keep building on that.
Yeah, we are reminding people of Lance Stevenson and then previous summer league performances. So there are some painful things mentioned here. What'd you think, Nata?
I thought that I think they found at least 8 and 9 in their rotation in the summer league. I think Nick Smith Jr. has earned at least a shot at being that backup 2 guard. I think he did a lot of things right. I think especially for in the position that he was in, I don't think he was in the best position to shine. I think he held the ball a lot. I think he had to. But for what he did, I do believe that like there's an 8th, 9th guy at least, or at least what I would call like your Peyton Pritchard role, if you're thinking about what Charles Lee likes to do. I think Nick Smith can do that, and I think he can do that very admirably. The other thing, like I can bring up the Brandon Miller stuff. That's like obvious. I didn't see all this rawness with Tajon Salon. Like for what you're gonna ask him to do in year 1, rebound, hustle, hit corner threes. The only thing that he really didn't do right was hit the corner threes, and even then, that's an off-season workout away. I'm not saying he has to be Giannis. Are there Giannis-like qualities to him? Yeah, but what I think they let him do was, okay, we're gonna let you play, and then now we're gonna take the video, tell you what you're not gonna do, what you are gonna do, and then you're gonna figure it out we're gonna start just slowly spoon feeding you. I think there's a lot of rawness to the kid, but I think there's an NBA caliber player year 1 in him, and I think a lot of the people saying he's going to spend a whole bunch of time in Greensboro, I'm not sure I see that in him yet.
Yeah, so you're calling him Giannis. Okay, we can see that. I think for me, if we're going with like him being so raw that it might not take as long for him to cook as other people think, okay, I could see that. But if we're talking about him not being so raw that he actually sees the floor a decent amount this year, I would push back on that. Like I think the 3 stuff for me, I think that matters for him to see the floor if we're not asking him to do a lot more else, right? Because he only hit 1 3, 10% on the attempts. Sample size is small, but also it's not like we have a background of him shooting very well either. So the form isn't broken. I think he will actually. I actually think that the form is one of the more tantalizing things about him, especially at that size. It's the fact that I do think that it could come along. I just don't know if it's going to come along so soon in the form of it happening his rookie year. And if I view that corner 3 thing as what his main role is going to be, along with getting out in transition and then going with some trash points, some buckets that he gets off offensive rebounds, like that can still be there. But man, the defense is just going to sink in so much if he's on the floor, depending on who you're talking about. Like if I'm a coach and I have to pay attention to different offensive players, Salon out there on the perimeter, like I'm not going to focus on as much on him. And so if he takes,
fair.
And if he takes a few shots and then he misses them, that only enhances. All right, well now we can cheat in a little more. And this is already a team that doesn't get to the rim on ball as well. So I think those are maybe some of the offensive reasons as to why he might not see it. Half court defense, I think it can totally be fixed. I think half court defense is going to have some stuff to figure out. But other than that, like I think to your point, Nata, yeah, I talked about this a couple episodes ago. I did think there was like some disaster potential. I did think that. Yeah. And that did not happen. Like I totally walked away from Summer League thinking, hey, you know what? This crazy thing just might work. And it doesn't seem, especially with the work ethic, especially with him doing stuff that you're going to ask him to do once he does figure it all out. I can see the vision of it happening in a way that differs from a Kai Jones who tried to do too much. And that's the other project that people try to compare him to. Like I didn't see Kai Jones.
He's not. He's not. He's not.
I don't see that. I don't see. Yeah, I don't see like the deer on skates or ice or whatever you want to call it. Like he passes the eye test for me as a basketball player. You know what I mean? Whereas Kai, like, and we don't want to go apples to apples here, but like it was kind of one move and up with Kai. I mean, so I think that I think you're right. The defensive stuff, like he absolutely lost at times out there, which is going to happen. He's also 19 years old or something,
not even
the youngest player in the draft. Yeah, not even. So like you'll love that. I just desperately want to see him run the break with LaMelo, like once or twice, because he's going to find him and he's going to finish. But yeah, it's just going to be interesting because they drafted him as much on potential as his go work ethic, I think, and like what he's going to. That's the new style player they're kind of looking to bring in, or the attitude they're looking to do. But like I'm with you, Nata. I didn't see like super raw. Like he can play basketball. I can't wait for this coaching staff to get around him and just smother him with tape and coaching and drills and practice and all this stuff that I think he's going to soak in because he seems like he wants to do that. So I mean, it's pretty tantalizing. I just don't know what we're going to see in year one. I mean, I definitely think he's going to be on the floor some. It's just TBD. How fast can he pick that up, right? How fast can he earn that trust of the coaching staff?
I think you can simplify. I think a lot of the stuff he did was just just trying stuff. And I don't think the coaches really did much to correct it. I think once they get the correction in, once they get a lot of the stuff simplified, you're going to see a legitimate NBA player and a guy that you can probably put out there 10 to 15 minutes. It's one of those hills I am willing to die on, that he's going to be a rotation player in year one.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
We'll see. Like, that'd be sweet.
Having him grab a rebound or a block or whatever and just run the break himself, like I didn't always know where it was going to go, but it usually ended up in a foul or he at least got – but like he was getting to the basket in like a dribble from the top of the key and a step, like a big old Euro step. And I mean – if he can give it up to LaMelo and get it back or something like that, like there was tantalizing stuff in that summer league. And I thought a lot of the announcers for some reason were like bagging on him at times. And
that damn one game, I mean, God almighty. We talked about that.
Hard.
The Greenberg game was
Seth was not a fan.
He did Seth. I mean, he would not have recruited him at Virginia Tech to be the 70th best team in the conference or the 70th best team in the country. Would not have done that. All right, let's give you some finishing thoughts coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast. Let's talk more about summer league observations, and then we have some offseason grades given out by ESPN. What kind of grade did the Charlotte Hornets get? Stick around for that and more right here on Locked On Hornets. All right, so if we go with more summer league thoughts real quickly, I think my big takeaway, it was good to get your thoughts on Salon. The other thing for me, and I mentioned this a couple of days ago too, man, it just felt like everybody shined for a decent stretch of whether it be in a game, whether it be over the course of a couple of games. You can go down the list of the guys that stayed for both the Classic and Vegas and say, yeah, man, like I remember a nice stretch of basketball from them, whether it be Xavier Simpson, who mattered so much to this squad, just helping everybody and organizing the offense. Matt Morgan. Yeah, I think it's safe. I liked Matt Morgan before he was perfect in a basketball game. Slater going for 30 in the last game of the Vegas session. Like, even when we go to the centers, Mo Gee had the flash at the beginning. Jake Stevens played well. And then I even like Banks defensively. Like, I actually thought he had some nice stuff defensively. It just felt like, we could do the hierarchy. We could rank, this guy had the best summer league. This guy had the second best summer league. It felt like every one of the players out there that got any kind of significant run showed you why they deserve to be on at least a summer league roster. And then it just felt like everything was also done professionally. The Bryce McGowan's thing. Hey, look, Bryce, we're not going to keep you on the team. We're too guard heavy, but you can still roll with us at the California Classic, and then you can ball out, and then you can see if that gives you another opportunity. It does. Matt Morgan, look, man, here's the ball. Shoot the lights out of it. Oh, you go perfect. You can go make some bread over with Virtus Bologna. Yeah, man. Thank you so much. We're probably not going to have you on the team, but go get you a contract. Like, it just felt that all the players got to eat a little bit, and then they were rewarded for it. And the Hornets acted professionally. And I love that we're seeing the beginning stages of that. What do you think, Nata?
The culture, like, I was one of those, like, whenever someone wants to talk about, oh, we want to instill a winning culture, we want to do this, I roll my eyes because, again, I'm old enough to remember the 4 pillars. I'm old enough to remember the first time Steve Clifford tried to set the culture.
4 pillars.
I remember.
Oh, God.
Yes, exactly. Like, there's a lot of this stuff that is just, you get tired of it and you automatically roll your eyes because it's just a reflex. These guys actually live their raps. These guys are not studio gangsters. They're clearly about culture there, and they're clearly about, okay, we're gonna do this. Get in your shorts defense. There's going to be attention to detail, attention to detail on defense that we haven't seen since the first Steve Clifford regime, by the way. Like, there's a lot of this stuff that the only thing it makes me wonder is how much of these guys are going to absorb when it comes to, like, when the real bullets fly in September, October. How much of this stuff is actually going to be learned? Because so far it looks like, hey, they brought some infectious attitudes, not just Charles Lee, but Longstaff as well. Like, a lot of these guys know how to get to players. And that is something that this team has needed for decades right now at this point, because this is the first guy I can think that, hey, if he's getting the summer league guys to listen, I'm pretty sure he's going to get the main roster guys to listen as well.
Top down, right? It looks like everything is top down, one message right now, and we'll see. And man, you just think about, if there's a group in the NBA that is desperate to experience some winning outside of Detroit, I mean, it's got to be the Hornets, right? Number one spot, Washington, right? But I would think that he will have these guys' ears. But just to your point on Summer League, man, look at the guys they went out and put on the Summer League team, on their Summer League rosters. I mean, to your point, Walker, they could play. Like, a lot of these guys could play, and they wanted to have a look at some of these guys. Some of them may be around. Most of them probably won't. But still, I mean, a fantastic showing for the Hornets out there in Summer League. And like you said, Nata, it just looks different, man. It just looks like a professional organization from the start of the game to the finish. And even after, man, they're talking about how much fun it's been. They're talking about how much these players are talking about how much they've enjoyed playing for the Hornets. Now, yes, they're in Vegas, but still, that's good to hear. And there's a lot of support. So, yeah, man, I hope that this top-down thing continues. And I would love to hear some of the players that were there. LaMelo, he's got a ball on the bench. It looks like they're chomping at the bit to get out there and play with this new organization, this new coaching staff. So that's got to be good for those guys to see too. So, about as good as you could hope for in Summer League, honestly.
Right. Exactly. Is there anything else you would have wished so much to see realistically? It's a great point. Yeah. I don't know how much better it really realistically could have gone. Rapid fire grades. I just wanted to mention this real quickly. So Kevin Pelton, he was part of ESPN.com, putting out all the offseason grades for every single team. The Hornets got a B, and this is what he writes. He says the Hornets are now operating like a rebuilding team. They added 3 second-round picks to take on Reggie Jackson's salary. Of course, they waived him. I don't know if we've talked about that on Locked On Hornets, but they just waived him. He signs with Philly, and of course, they got Josh Green for a second rounder as a part of the Klay Thompson trade. He does say guaranteeing Miles Bridges a 3-year, $75 million deal after his 2022 no contest plea to felony domestic violence charges. That was more questionable. He did say from a basketball standpoint, however, Bridges' descending contract should increase his trade value over time. And we've talked about the idea of that descending contract. Yeah, if you want to keep him, it's valuable. If you want to trade him, it's valuable. No matter what you want to do with that contract, it's a nice asset retention mode. And that's what I think, that can even help you on the court. Miles, we do know, is still a good player. Do you agree with the grade, Nata? We'll go with you first here. What do you think about the grade there being a B for the Hornets? Do you think it should be even a tick higher?
I wouldn't say it's an A. I would say it's a solid B, if not a B plus. I would say the Miles Bridges stuff, like you paid a market deal and you got to remember that with these deals, you're giving him just enough money so that he's not disgruntled and he's not a bigger problem in the locker room. So the fact that you got him on a market deal, and I'm not sure how long he's actually going to be here. He may end up being new PJ. I think that's a good bit of business. I think the Salon, everyone getting mad about the Salon pick I think that's water under the bridge. I think you see what he can be at this point. I just like what they did. They added Josh Green. They added guys that we've been screaming, hey, you need to add this. And I also don't think they think of themselves as a rebuilding team either. I think they see that, hey, 9 and 10 are going to be available in terms of a playing game. And I think that's what they're going to go. And if they get 9 or 10, that's a great season because, as we saw, the number 1 pick last year came from a play-in team. So I think they're looking at this in the best of both worlds. Like, hey, we're going to try and win as many games as we can. If we don't, and we may end up with Cooper Flagg or one of these really, really top flight, top 5 picks next year. It's not the worst position to be in.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk draft strategy. Well, we might as well talk it all year. We talk it all year anyway. I don't think tanking is the way to go, though. It just doesn't bear that out in this new format. Don't tell the Nets that. But, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think what they did was – I think it's a solid B as well. I've seen some out there with like a lower and a C, which I just don't get. I mean, you're not going to get an A. They didn't land Paul George. They didn't, land a big, free agent star. They retained their own, which can raise eyebrows just because of the situation of Miles Bridges. But they also did a lot of behind the scenes work and didn't tie themselves up, financially moving forward. They made some good deals. They moved off some stuff. They got some assets, right? They did a lot of the stuff we've been screaming for them to do, what smart teams do, what professional organizations do. It's not sexy. It's not going to, bear out right now. But it's the right thing to do moving forward. So, I think it was all in all. And also, they got their coach. I mean, you can't overlook that.
Yeah, it's a good point.
What I mean?
Yeah.
They got their coach. And they got their GM and their front office. So it's a whole total overhaul and certainly a solid B for me and the best offseason probably the Hornets have had in quite some time.
Yeah, I totally agree. Okay. That's it. David Walker, Nata Edwards. Thanks to them. I can talk. David Walker's on Twitter at David B. Walker. There's Nata on Twitter at Nata the Scribe, helping me out with Doug still on vacation. He should be back with me next week. Yeah, I know. Yeah, he's still doing the vacation thing, but again, he should be back with me next week.
Sunscreen, Doug. The sunscreen.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3. Big thanks to these guys. Big thanks to you for listening to the pod anywhere you get your podcast. Again, make sure you subscribe to YouTube. We're trying to get to 7,000 subscribers. Maybe just see an uptick in production there. Go ahead and subscribe, and then also catch us anywhere else you get your pods. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll be back with you tomorrow.